Hey Grumblers, I'm back again. I thought I would have a bit more time to rest, but apparently not. We already have a new batch of information, once again thanks to 9-bit. And this time it looks like he also worked with Grodes to clarify a lot of the things we had already seen before. So today we have both new information and better explanations for some of the previous leaks. The first important point is that there now seems to be a pretty strong consensus around the normal items. They are probably not necessarily weapons. They are more likely to be cumulative equipment effects, because there are simply too many interactions between certain effects for them to make sense as isolated weapon bonuses. You can see that across several weapons. For example, the snipe effect, triple snipe, and the follow-up explosion I mentioned in the previous video. If that was just one weapon effect by itself, it would be pretty bad. But if you can combine several effects together, suddenly the whole thing becomes much stronger. That's the first big clarification. We also have new information about Wand, and as you can see, I rebuilt the document to make everything much clearer. Each skill is now listed properly, and each weapon also seems to have a new passive skill. You can read those directly in the document if you want to dig into the details. Some of these passives change mechanics in interesting ways. For example, on Sword and Shield, blocking an attack could apply AoE debuffs and even curses. Seeing curses on Sword and Shield is a little surprising, but apparently that's where we're going. There is also more detail on Archboss weapons, more information on Gauntlets, and generally more numbers across the board. I will put the document link in the comments and in the description. This is not the exact same link as last time, because I had to rebuild the whole document properly. Quick warning though, we now have more numbers, but everything is still subject to change. These are leaks. The final implementation can still evolve. There are also still some translation issues. I keep seeing people talk about Rapid Shot, but to me Rapid Shot does not exist in Throne and Liberty. Tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. But for now, the only skill that really matches the descriptions is Multi-Shot. There is another similar point with the Longbow Archboss effect. A lot of people assume the AoE route comes from Flash Wave, but I really don't think that's possible. If Flash Wave applied an AoE route, it would either be completely broken or I'm missing something huge. To me, this is much more likely to be Flash Arrow, the version connected to stealth detection. We also have an important clarification for staff. The stealth effect is not just a simple invisibility button. It looks more like a frost mist placed on the ground. My interpretation is that players could potentially enter that mist and gain a camouflage effect. We don't know exactly how it behaves yet. Maybe you lose the effect when you leave the mist. Maybe it lasts a few seconds after leaving. That part is not fully clear. But the idea is very interesting. It reminds me of Guild Wars 2, where you could enter a mesmer wall, stealth the whole group, and then reappear somewhere else together. If Throne and Liberty get something similar, it could create really cool group movement and engage opportunities. Now, the biggest new section for me is Wand. In the previous document I had a lot of question marks and exclamation marks because the data was incomplete. This time we have much more information, and some of it is very spicy. For example, Corrupted Magic Circle could have a larger radius and a reduced cooldown. That's already interesting. We also now have a clearer value for the damage taken increase on the Sleep Curse. It seems to be 10%, and with the Nightmare version it could go up to 20% increased damage taken. That's huge. Imagine applying that with propagation. Curse Bomb could come back very hard with this kind of mechanic. I really want to see what strong Wand players will be able to do with that. Then we have some surprising mechanics, like reflecting magic damage through Decaying Touch. Decaying Touch is the Rotting Touch skill. The effect would last 6 seconds with a 20% cooldown increase. Since the base cooldown is around 12 seconds, it would go up to about 15 seconds. Now, if you also have 100% buff duration, 6 seconds can become 12 seconds, meaning you could have close to permanent uptime on a 15% magic damage reflection effect. That sounds like an extremely strong support mechanic to me. In PvP especially, reflecting magic damage almost permanently could be a very serious tool. There are also PvE-oriented or support-oriented options. Instead of using Corrupted Magic Circle only for damage, a healer-oriented build could use it to increase the group's damage. It would force people to play more stacked together, but on some fights people already do that anyway. What I like here is the diversity. It is not just full healing or full damage anymore. The systems are starting to overlap more. They already did something similar with Mastery, where some healing skills could become DPS skills. Here we almost have the opposite, damage skills gaining support or healing utility. That's interesting design. Enchantments also add more small effects. We still don't know if we'll have one enchantment or several, but there are some details worth noting. Some are weak, like small radius increases. I already said last time that some propagation values look bugged, so going from 3 to 6 targets might not matter if the current behavior is already weird. But cooldown reduction on Salvation of Clay is much more interesting. There are also bonuses tied to night and day effects and devotion and void mechanics. That could matter a lot depending on how the final system works. Another enchantment will interest bombers, invocators, and similar builds, plus 3% damage per weekend stack. If you can apply 3 stacks, that's 9% increased damage that's strong. The question is whether that 3% only affects Touch of Despair, or whether it applies to all damage. That's a very big difference, and we'll have to see. Then we have a new passive that is honestly very surprising. When you apply dots to an enemy, your allies could trigger dark explosions. Now, dark explosions are not necessarily curse explosions. At first I wasn't sure what that meant, but it might be a reduced version of the curse explosion effect. If it doesn't consume the dots and still triggers extra damage, that could be way too strong. It might even be stronger than Abyssal Burst in some cases. Again, we'll need to see how it works in practice, but on paper this looks extremely painful. Hopefully it is not 100% of the dark explosion damage, because that would be crazy. And then we have a new Archboss Wand. Instead of dealing damage, this one could apply fear, and from what I understand it could apply fear through Fountain of Life. If that's true, it's huge. Imagine placing the fountain on the ground and enemies trying to dive into it. Tanks, melee DPS, assassins, whatever can get feared when they enter. Very few players invest heavily into fear resistance, so this could become a very strong defensive tool. It could save someone getting jumped by a greatsword player or by something like Cordy's greatsword. You would need good timing of course, but even pre-placing it before an enemy dash could create incredible survivability. There is also the Prismatic Ray effect. This one lets you place up to 3 prisms. Honestly, it almost feels like Wand is becoming Orb, and Orb is becoming Wand. The wand gets 3 prisms that can connect to each other and deal damage, while also reducing enemy mana. And on the other side, Orb has a skill that can become a ray, similar to Ray of Disaster, dealing damage to people caught in the beam, so there is a funny crossover between the 2 weapons. There are still some effects I don't fully understand, like Touch of Chaos. We'll have to wait for more details, but overall there are a lot of things here that make me think. I'm not going to go much further into every single number. I'll let you read the document if you want the full details. There are small updates everywhere, but the major mechanics are the ones we just covered. The important thing is that we now have more information. Not all numbers are complete, and some names are still messy, but the document is much cleaner now and it is available in the description. If you have feedback, criticism, corrections, or anything to add, please share it. I'm still trying to improve these videos. I haven't been doing this format for very long, so I'm sure there are many things I can still do better. Otherwise, I'll probably see you again very soon. I'll let you read the document quietly, and later we can probably make more videos focused on synergies, builds, and actual theory crafting. For now, there is a lot of information, and honestly, I'm very motivated by what is coming. Also, don't forget to slow down a little before NIX arrives. Take it easy, rest a bit, and come back fresh when it's time to farm again. A lot of people are already doing that, but seriously, don't burn yourself out right before the expansion. Personally, I even found myself a small guild. I'm alone, farming quietly, doing my 7 dungeons every week, and collecting my loot like a proper little rat. It gives me a few hundred lucent per week on this character, just through that mechanic. So breathe a bit, take a small break if you need it, and come back in good shape. We'll see each other very soon, alright? See you!